Okay, so the second part of today's lesson is about probability, just the basics. First off, probability is a measure of the likelihood that an event will occur. Hopefully you have dealt with some probability before, but just in case we're going over the basics. Probability of an event happening is a numerical value between 0 and 1 or 0 and 100%. By definition, the probability of an event is the favorable over the total, meaning what we're looking for over the total possibilities. So an example that's pretty classic is flipping a coin. Probability of flipping a heads is 1 out of 2, same as a tails, because there's only one head out of the two sides of a coin. There are two types of probability. You have experimental and theoretical. Experimental is literally when you go through doing the experiment, you keep flipping the coin over and over and over and over again, recording each time. The theoretical probability is the idea of what it should come out to be in the end. So theoretically, every time you flip a coin, it should be 50-50 chance of getting a heads or a tails. Is that probably what's going to happen? Probably not in a couple coin tosses. You might get heads, heads, and then tails, and then heads, heads. It just depends on how you flip the coin and how many times you flip it. But overall, the theory is that the probability would be 1/2. An outcome is a possible result to a situation or experiment, so that would be your heads or tails. The event itself can be a single outcome or a group of outcomes. And then the set of all possible outcomes are your sample space. So let's look at example 1. In example 1, we're talking about quality control, inspecting some LCD monitors. We have 500, which are our total, and out of that 500, we find defects in 3 of them. That's our possible amount. So the first question asks, what is the probability that a monitor selected at random will have a defect? Well, in our selection, 3 out of the 500 have defects. So that right there would be your probability. 3 out of 500 is 0.006 or 0.6% if you're asked to write it as a decimal. You move the decimal 2 places to the right. Remember, we're dividing by 100. Then it says if the company manufactures 15,240 monitors in a month, how many are likely to have a defect based off the inspector's results? So you just set up a proportion. X out of how many we're going to make that month equals our probability. Cross multiply, and 91.44 monitors will have a defect, so around 91. Now pause the video and try the you try. Okay, here we're talking about parks and how many trees they have. There are 538 trees total in the park. If we choose 40 at random, 25 of them would be maple trees. So what's the probability that we chose a maple tree? That would be 25 out of 40, which reduces to 5 out of 8, which is 0.625 if you're asked to write it as a decimal, or 62.5%. Then, to tell how many trees in the total of the park would be maple, we set up our proportion. 5 over 8, which is our probability, equals x over 538, our total amount. Cross multiply, and about 336 trees would be maple. Next, what's the probability of getting each sum when rolling 2 standard number cubes? A standard number cube is a cube that goes from 1 to 6, and we want to talk about the sum. So we get 1 and 1, then that's 2, all the way up to 6 and 6, which is 12. So any numbers between 1 and 12 would be or 2 and 12 would be our sums. So looking at these, what's the possibility of getting 7? Well, think about our cubes as 2 different colors, so we can repeat numbers. The possibility of getting a sum of a 7 is using a 6 or a 1, a 2 or a 5, and a 3 or a 4. And you can get 1, 6, 6, or 1 because remember these are 2 different die. There are 6 of these possibilities out of 36 total combinations because you have 6 numbers on the first die, 6 numbers on the second die, so that's 36 possibilities. 6 out of 36 would reduce to 1 out of 6. Same thing with 9. We can get 3 and 6, 6 and 3, 4 and 5, 5 and 4. 4 options out of 36 or 1/9. To get 2, our only option is 1 and 1, so that's 1 out of 36. To get 13, there's no way to roll 2 standard number cubes and get a sum of 13. The highest you can get is 12, so that would be 0. The complement of an event is the possibility that it doesn't happen. So if you are saying the complement of flipping a heads, that would mean flipping tails. So it's always the opposite of what you were looking for. In the example, if you roll a standard number cube, the probability of rolling a number less than 3 would be rolling the 1 or the 2, so that would be 2 out of 6. The probability of not rolling a number less than 3, so that would be your 3, 4, 5, and 6, so that would be 4 out of 6. This word complement and not are the same. So when you say not less than 3, that's meaning the complement of rolling less than 3. So then, in short, the sum of the probability of an event and the probability of its complement will always be 1, because that way you use up the whole sample space. So the probability of the event plus the probability of not an event is 1. If I add my 2, 6, and 4, 6, I get 1. Or we can look at it as the probability of it not happening is 1 minus the probability of it happening. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to look at it as that subtraction. So now, let's look at some examples. You have a jar that contains some marbles. Okay, that jar has 10 red marbles, 8 green marbles, 5 blue, and 6 white. So total, 29. What's the probability of selecting a marble that is not green? There are a couple ways you can go about this. You can add the 10, the 5, and the 6, which will give you 21. Or you can say there are 8 green marbles, so that means 29 of them are not green. Either way, you still get 21, and 21 out of 29 is your probability. The probability of randomly choosing a marble that is not red, again, 29 minus 10 is 19, or the 8, the 5, and the 6 of the colors that are not red add up to be 19, so 19 out of 29. Now pause the video and try the U-Try. In this U-Try, we have a bag that contains ping pong balls. We have 2 red, 3 green, 3 blue, and 1 yellow. If you notice, that color wasn't written in there. You might want to write in there for these questions. That means we have 9 total. What's the probability of selecting a ping pong ball that is not yellow? Is everything but that 1 yellow, so that's 8 out of 9. And then the probability of selecting a ball that is not blue, when there are 3 blue, means 6 out of 9, which reduces to 2/3. Please make sure when you're doing your probabilities that you're paying attention to directions. They need to be in reduced fraction form, rounded correctly to the right decimal, or the correct percent. Just to be safe, I would write everything as a reduced fraction, so make sure you know how to do that in your calculator. That way we all have the same answers and we're not rounding to different things. So, quick review of today. You should be comfortable with all of this. Being able to create a Venn diagram, knowing what the difference between a union and intersection is. So remember, a union is when all things from all sets are combined. The intersection is when things are picked from both sets that they have in common. Disjoint are Venn diagrams that have nothing in common. And our probability is the possible over the total, and be able to pull out marbles from a bag, flipping a coin, that type of thing. And then what the definition of complement means. So complement, again, means not happening. So if you have the word probability, what's the probability of picking a letter that's not a B? That's the complement of choosing B. If you have any questions on basic probability or Venn diagrams, now's the time to ask Miss Lewis. Otherwise, you need to work on your homework from this section.